Walsh here with our weekly Chairman's Update. And we are sort of taking a new direction for the remainder of this election season. Over the next several weeks, we're going to do interviews with the state-endorsed candidates for statewide executive offices. And we're going to be talking with each of the candidates once or twice a week about their races, their candidacy, what they see, what they want to do to fix what's broken in Washington. And for our first victim here in this process, we have David Olson, who is the state party-endorsed candidate for the Superintendent of Public Instruction. That is the statewide school superintendent, elected on the same cycle as the governor in a 4-year term like the governor. In many states, this position is appointed by the governor. Here in Washington, OSPI, the superintendent, is independently elected. And so, David, you did a great job in the primary. It was a contested primary with 3 very strong candidates, including the incumbent superintendent. And you and the incumbent are the 2 moving on to November. The third candidate, who was interesting, you beat by a pretty healthy margin, and now it's going to be you and the incumbent, a fellow by the name of Reichel,
Right.
who are going to face each other in November. And Reichel really has overseen some major trouble with our public schools in Washington.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the first question I would ask you about this race is, anybody who cares about public schools has seen that the kids are struggling.
Right.
Their performance is down, their standardized test results are down, attendance is down, graduation rates are kind of steady, but not great. I guess why? Why are there these problems, and what's your perspective on how to fix them?
Well, first off, the election allowed 61% of the state to not support the incumbent. That's pretty telling that such a large majority of our state doesn't have confidence in Superintendent Reichel. Over his 8 years in office, we went from number 8 in the nation with our public education to number 27 today. That's a significant decline. Across the state of Washington, less than half our kids can read and write at grade level. Only about a third of our students can pass their math and science at grade level. So we're not preparing our students under this leadership for post-high school success, whether that's go straight into the workforce, college, military, or trade school. And I believe when I talk to teachers across the state, the reason for this is student discipline issues are at an all-time high. Cell phone use in the classroom is really preventing them from doing their job. And student mental health hasn't really been addressed properly by the superintendent since the COVID lockdown.
Well, I mean, you've been really out front on all 3 of those issues, on discipline in general, on use of cell phones in classes, and of course the recovery from the lockdowns.
Right.
And with very sort of action-oriented. You're currently a school board member in Pierce County, where your school board has actually done these things.
Right.
I've noticed that the kind of education establishment in this state, including the current superintendent, they're kind of jacking your ideas. They're
Right.
stealing some of the things you've done
Yeah.
at your Peninsula School District in Pierce County. Why do you think they're doing that?
Well, I would say it's hard to deny success. So around the campaign trail for the last couple of months, all our candidate forums, my interviews with newspapers, I've been able to tout the success of these programs at the Peninsula School District. And even the Seattle Times wrote very glowing comments about myself and my school district for our success around addressing student mental health and discipline around cell phones. Reichel on the campaign trail has said he doesn't believe it's OSPI's job to make those decisions. However, yesterday he came out with guidance to say schools maybe want to consider getting rid of cell phones. He didn't say, oh, David Olson's already done this. But Reichel's guidance shows weakness where we've actually done it. And so that shows strength. So I can go out there and say, I've done this. We are addressing student mental health. He talks in circles and he's a really smooth talker, but he's not a man of action. So to say, here's some guidance is not the same thing as we've already done it, or when on day one, I will make this happen. So I think that's sort of a difference. He's definitely jacking some of my success, so, for his gain, power of his office, so to speak.
We see a lot of that, of course,
Yeah.
in politics. But beyond just those 3 points in policy of schools, on a broader sense, in a bigger picture, kind of style, how do you think you and the current superintendent differ? What would you say your differences are when it comes to addressing these issues that affect how kids are learning?
I think the difference is when I'm out there, I say, I've done it, or we've done it. He says, I will. And so there's a big difference between a doer and a talker. And I think Reichdahl for years has been a good talker. He says, I will put a bill out. I will do this. But he hasn't been a strong advocate for academic rigor in our state. He hasn't been a strong advocate to fully fund special ed, which is really hurting our teachers because they don't have the trained paraeducators to help them manage their day. He's always about I will. But for me and my board, we have proven success. We are doers. And around literacy, we're a leader in the state. Around academics, where a lot of school districts are struggling, we didn't fall off the fiscal cliff like many school districts, like Seattle Public Schools, Moses Lake. Yelm's in trouble right now, so is Marysville. We built 6 brand-new schools and lay off any teachers, so that's pretty telling. And so I think the fact that we've been accomplished, where he just talks a good game, I think that's a big difference. And so I'd say that's the biggest issue, is he's a smooth talker, but he's not a doer.
And that fiscal point is a critical one, David. There are so many school districts that are struggling, that are riffing, laying off teachers, closing campuses. I think it's to your credit that your district has not suffered those kinds of problems, and certainly Reichdahl's guidances in a fiscal sense to school districts have not helped them very much.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. Well, the last issue I want to cover with you about schools and kids and helping them learn is, of course, has to do with parental involvement. And we recently passed the Washington Parents' Bill of Rights through the legislature. It started as an initiative, but now it's law.
Yeah.
The ACLU and a bunch of other really extreme partisan groups have tried to challenge that law in court. They've mostly lost. They got the court to stay a couple parts of it, but generally the Parents' Bill of Rights is law. But really, the question to my mind about helping kids do better is bigger even than the Parents' Bill of Rights. It's what is the role of parental involvement in a kid's education? And we say parental, we really mean families. I mean, grandparents, uncles, aunts, siblings, the family involvement, but for the sake of argument, parental involvement in a kid's learning. What do you see as the role of parental involvement in a child's education?
I think studies and statistics have shown that engaged parents that take a real interest in their students' education, those children do much better academically. They're more competent. They're more engaged in their studies. I know a lot of parents are stressed, with the economy the way it is, but still parental involvement, even if it's just the school notifying the parent what's going on, that, hey, your kid's, having a tough time, or your kid didn't show up to school today, what's going on? Are they sick? Those are things that parents, in my opinion, have a right to be involved with and to be notified. There is a bill, I believe it might have been a Senate bill, that said we are going to provide for student wellness. And in that bill, comically, if you will, it says we will be full in front of parents and they will be fully engaged in this. But Reichdahl tosses that to the side, and on June 5th of this year, the day before the 2081 took effect, he put out a press release basically informing all the elected school board members like me to break that law and to just ignore it and don't tell parents what's going on in their students' world, in their academic world. He also recently, and that's scary if you're a parent, that's very scary, but he also recently said that from the moment that student walks into the school to the moment they leave, they belong to the state. That is even more scary. And so, in my opinion, the student walks in the door, you check politics at the door as a teacher and a staff member, and your primary focus is to educate that student. And if they're struggling, you notify the parents and you work with the parents to help you. Don't keep secrets from parents. I know when my kids were in school, in public schools, we used to have parent-teacher conferences, and they would sit down with us and talk to us about how their kids are doing and what we might do to help them get better. And I don't see that happening as much anymore. And I think that's because our current leadership, that superintendent, isn't a fan of parental involvement. He wants to limit parental involvement as much as possible and make it his way or the highway. And Reichdahl has been very is a bully tactic. If you don't do it my way, I'm gonna take all your state funding. Whether that was around COVID issues or teaching certain curriculums, he threatens to take our state funding. But he didn't threaten to take state funding if we broke the law about parental rights. He actually supported breaking that law. So
He's
that's
very selective because
Yes.
withholding that money is actually breaking the law.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
I guess he gets to pick and choose which laws to follow.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, Dave, thanks so much
You're
for
welcome.
this quick interview. I mean, I think the reason you did well in the primary and the reason you held the incumbent to such a low percentage, majority of people voting against the incumbent, is a testament to what you have achieved already as a school board member in a district that's doing well. And I think the promise of what you're taking over that office as superintendent of public instruction would do for schools all over the state.
Right.
I think people have a good sense of that, and I think they will see through a lot of that smooth talk and a lot of the media spin because they care about their kids
Yeah.
and they want kids to do better. And it's just such a tragedy that we used to be one of the best states for public education, and now we're lucky to be in the middle. We're kind of the low end of middle.
Right.
It's a long way to fall while this current incumbent has been fiddling.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Anyway, good to talk to you.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for coming in.
You bet.
That's it for this week. We will be back really in a few days with another interview. Until then, be well and stay strong.
Thank you.
Great.